Oscar Jackson's fingers felt rough as sandpaper against the mannequin's sweating face. The bone scalpel bit into the wall with a dry, grinding rasp that echoed the wind's flute, like moan through the keyhole. Rain, slicked soot dripped from the ceiling, leaving muddy earth-toned streaks on the plaster where I'd scraped. My breath fogged the cold air, tasting of salt and seawater, the same taste coating my lips whenever the scratching started. It was rhythmic. Scritch, scritch, scritch. Like a key turning in a lock deep inside the wall, my heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic counterpoint to the sound. Thumb scritch, thumb scritch. I'd heard it for 3 nights straight, a metronome keeping time with my failing body. The station's generator coughed in the distance, a metallic wheeze that faded into the wind's reedy tune. My fingers bled onto the wall, the red a startling contrast to the dull, wet brown of the plaster. The rain-soaked soot smelled like burnt plastic and forgotten graves. I wiped the blood onto my trousers, muddy earth tones like the station's own decay, and tried to steady my breathing. An out scritch! The rhythm was inescapable. The wind through the keyhole shifted pitch, mimicking my ragged gasps. The wet, reedy flute. My eyeglasses slipped from my fingers, the glass lenses catching the faint, sickly glow of the light bulb hanging crookedly above the bed. It only glowed when evil was near. Now it pulsed with a cold blue-white light that made the shadows in the corner writhe. I reached for them, but the cat was there. It sat on the bedpost, its fur made of thick, oily smoke that coiled and uncoiled like liquid shadow. Its eyes were 2 points of absolute black, reflecting nothing. The cat's fur brushed my hand as I fumbled for the glasses, sucking wetness. The sound wasn't a pop or a snap. It was a deep, viscous glop, like swallowing a mouthful of cold tar. My glasses vanished into the cat's throat. The wind's flute melody changed again, now a higher, more panicked note, matching the frantic flutter in my chest. I dropped the bone scalpel. It clattered onto the floorboards, the metallic finkling cooey of it hitting wood. My fingers trembled as I pressed them against the wall, searching for the source of the scratching, the place where the sound seemed to originate. The plaster was cool, damp beneath my fingertips. I scraped deeper, the bone edge catching on something hard. Scritch, scritch, scritch! My thumb found a tiny jagged edge. I pushed harder, the bone scraping against something brittle. Crack! A fragment of something small and hard broke free. I held it up. It was a single tiny tooth, yellowed with age, its surface etched with strange, spiraling patterns. The wind through the keyhole hummed a low, resonant note, a single deep well echo that vibrated in my bones. My fingers, slick with blood and rain-soaked soot, found the cat's throat. It was still warm, still breathing. The cat's oily smoke, fur coiled around my hand, a living thing made of shadow and silence. The wind's flute melody softened, shifting into a slow, deep, resonant hum. The sound filled the room, a lullaby woven from the wind and the cat's steady, warm breath against my skin. The light bulb above the bed pulsed its cold, blue-white light, illuminating the tiny spiral tooth in my palm. The scratching stopped. The only sound was the wind's deep, warm hum, and the steady, warm pulse of the cat's throat against my fingers. The blood flowed sluggishly from the cut on my thumb, a thick, viscous smear against the thin, yellowed paper. I traced the station's layout, a crude map of corridors and rooms with the crimson ink. Each line, a desperate attempt to impose order on the chaos blooming in my mind. The light bulb socket above me remained stubbornly cold. My theory that it reacted to the presence of something. Furiother felt increasingly fragile, a child's explanation for a monster under the bed. Rain, a greasy, oily soot, pattered against the window panes, a relentless percussion that tasted like saltwater on my tongue. Pit-pat, each drop a tiny unwelcome kiss. The cat watched me, its eyes twin pools of absolute black, reflecting nothing. It hadn't moved from the bedpost since the tooth. It didn't blink. I could feel its gaze, a weight pressing against my skull. The map was useless, a child's drawing of a labyrinth I was already lost within. The wind, trapped within the keyhole, sighed a mournful song. A drawn-out, desolate note. My IV line, a thin plastic tether to a dwindling life, felt wrong. I glanced down. The tubing had twisted, contorted itself into a spiral, mimicking the patterns etched into the tiny tooth I still held. The metal needle, usually cool against my skin, felt strangely warm, almost feverish. I tugged at the line, a reflexive gesture, and a sharp, stinging pain shot up my arm. The spiral tightened. I released it quickly, a tremor running through my hand. The cat's fur rippled, a silent wave passing through its oily form. I needed to distract it, anything to break the oppressive stillness. "Go on," I croaked, my voice rough from disuse. "Go get your toy!" I pointed towards the drain. The cat's head tilted, a slow, deliberate movement. It padded silently across the floor, a shadow gliding across shadows. I watched as it approached the drain, a silver gleam momentarily catching my eye. It nudged the tooth towards the metal grate with its nose, a gesture both casual and precise. Then, with a subtle, almost imperceptible shift, the tooth vanished. Fusluherb! The cat's fur seemed to food absorb, the gleam drawing the light into its smoky depths. My fingers trembled as I returned to the map. The lines blurred, the station's layout dissolving into a chaotic tangle. I felt a pressure behind my eyes, a dull ache that threatened to overwhelm me. The saltwater taste on my tongue intensified, coating my mouth with a gritty film. The wind song shifted again. This time a low, guttural hum that resonated in my bones. Thoughty focus, to anchor myself to the tangible. The paper felt rough beneath my fingertips. The air smelled of dust and decay. The cat's presence was a constant, unsettling warmth against the chill of the room. I reached for a fresh sheet of paper, intending to redraw the map, to impose order once more. But as I reached, I noticed the ivy line again. It wasn't just twisted, it was singing. A slow, wet tivant thrumen emanated from the plastic tubing, a subtle vibration that I felt more than heard. Thrum, thrum! The cat's fur, previously a swirling mass of smoky grey, was deepening. It was becoming darker, almost black, a void swallowing the light. The edges of its form seemed to be blurring, dissolving into the shadows. It was as if it were growing, expanding, consuming the room. The threethrum from the IV line grew louder, a pulsing rhythm that echoed the beat of my own failing heart. Thrum, thrum. The wind's hum intensified, a deep, resonant drone that seemed to vibrate within my very skull. Hoom! I wanted to scream, to lash out, to break the oppressive silence, but my voice caught in my throat, a strangled gasp. I was trapped, a fly caught in a web of unseen forces. The map lay forgotten on the table, a testament to my futile attempts at control. The cat, now a creature of near absolute darkness, began to advance. Its movements were slow, deliberate, each step a silent promise of something unknown and terrible. The thrum from the IV line reached a fever pitch. Thrum! Thrum! The wind's hum became a deafening roar. The cat's fur continued to darken, absorbing the last vestiges of light. It was a living shadow, a void made manifest. The room felt smaller, tighter, the air thick with an unseen pressure. The cat stopped directly in front of me, its form a swirling vortex of darkness. It raised its head, and I saw for the first time a faint glimmer within its eyes. Not a reflection, but an inner light, a cold, malevolent spark. It was the same sickly blue-white glow as the light bulb, but contained within the cat's gaze. It was the end. The severed finger, cold and slick, felt impossibly heavy in my palm. Not the cat's, of course, a specimen, one of the earlier volunteers. I hadn't bothered with sutures. The rain continued its oily assault on the station, a relentless drumming that resonated through the metal hull. Pit-pat, pit-pat! Each drop a miniature impact, a tiny explosion of grime. I held the finger aloft, positioning it before the cold socket, a grotesque offering to a broken god. The light bulb, stubbornly dark, remained indifferent. I needed to understand, not just see, but Toverty comprehended. The station's layout, the tooth, the cat. It wasn't about what was twin here. It was about what it twin meant. A pattern, a sequence, a ritual. The realization struck me with the force of a physical blow, a sickening lurch in my gut. And as the understanding solidified, a faint, sickly blue-white glow flickered within the bulb. It wasn't bright, not yet. Just a hesitant spark, a fragile promise of illumination. The saltwater taste on my tongue intensified, a briny flood coating my mouth. It wasn't the rain, it wasn't dehydration, it was the station itself seeping into me, becoming part of me. I pressed the tip of my tongue against the roof of my mouth, trying to isolate the sensation, to analyze it. It tasted of ancient things, of forgotten depths, of the crushing weight of water. The cat hadn't moved, still perched on the bedpost, a silent sentinel. But its eyes, they weren't reflecting the room. They weren't reflecting flecking anything. They were voids, absolute blackness, a deep well echoing with unseen depths. I focused on the cat's gaze, trying to decipher the emptiness. It wasn't a lack of reflection. It was an absorption of light, a complete and utter negation of illumination. My fingers trembled as I reached out, drawn to the cat's fur. It wasn't cold, not exactly. It was absent, as if the texture itself had been erased, leaving only a smooth, oily surface. I brushed my fingertips across its back, and a strange sensation washed over me. It wasn't a feeling of touch, but of tundlosé. The cat's fur didn't reflect the faint glow from the bulb, it consumed it. The blue-white light, hesitant moments before, was drawn into the smoky depths of its coat, swallowed whole. The bulb dimmed, then flickered, then died, plunging the room into near darkness. The station's emergency lights, a sickly green, cast long, distorted shadows across the walls. But the darkness wasn't absolute. There was still a faint, ethereal glow emanating from the cat. The oily smoke that constituted its fur was deepening, solidifying. It wasn't simply becoming darker. It was becoming fidence of shadow. The edges of its form blurred, losing definition. It was as if the cat was unraveling, dissolving into the surrounding darkness, yet simultaneously growing, expanding, filling the room. I tried to pull my hand away, but I couldn't. My fingers were stuck, as if glued to the cat's fur. A strange warmth emanated from its body, a heat that felt both comforting and terrifying. The saltwater taste on my tongue was now overwhelming, a corrosive tide threatening to drown me. The wind, trapped within the keyhole, wasn't sighing anymore. A slow, rhythmic inhale and exhale, a guttural rasp that resonated in my chest. Ooh. The sound wasn't coming from the keyhole. It was coming from the walls, from the floor, from the very structure of the station itself. I focused on the cat's eyes. They were no longer voids, they were. The sickly blue-white glow, now intensified, emanated from within their depths. It wasn't a reflection. It wasn't a trick of the light. The cat's eyes were the light bulb, a perfect replica of the cold, malevolent spark. The cat's gaze locked onto mine, and I felt a cold dread seep into my soul. It wasn't a look of malice, or anger, or even hunger. It was a look of understanding. It knew what I was beginning to comprehend. The ritual, the sequence, the meaning. And it was sharing it with me, forcing it into my mind, unraveling my sanity. The room seemed to stretch, to distort, to warp. The walls pulsed, the floor undulated, the air grew thick, heavy, suffocating. I was no longer in the research station. I was inside the cat's eyes, trapped within the blue-white glow, lost in a labyrinth of shadow and light. The cat's fur, now a solid, impenetrable darkness, enveloped me completely. The furihum became a deafening roar, a cosmic scream that echoed through the void. The saltwater taste on my tongue transformed into the icy sting of oblivion. I was dissolving, unraveling, becoming part of the darkness. The cat's eyes glowing in the wall were the only reality. They were the end. The metal of the flamethrower was cold against my palm, a deceptive chill. The bulb socket, blackened and brittle, offered little resistance. A hiss of escaping gas, a brief flare of orange, and then the plastic wept, melting into a viscous black tear. It wasn't the destruction of the light that mattered. It was the severing of the connection, the cessation of that sickly blue-white pulse. I'd been fixated on the thing itself, the glass and filament, the flow of electricity. A fool's errand. The horror wasn't contained within the object. It was in the understanding of its purpose, the ritual, the sequence, the meaning. The wind, funneled through the keyhole, had shifted. No longer a mournful sigh, but a melody, a fractured lullaby played on a broken flute. Each note a shard of glass against my teeth. It wasn't just the wind anymore. It was a voice, a gentle, insidious murmur that wormed its way into my skull. I pressed my hands against my ears, but the sound bypassed my defenses, resonating directly within my bones. The station creaked and groaned around me, a skeletal frame responding to the song. My gaze drifted to the cat. It hadn't moved, hadn't blinked, still perched on the bedpost, a monument to silent observation. But the fur, it wasn't smoke anymore. Not exactly. It was growing, spreading. Tendrils of oily darkness, creeping across the metal frame of the bed, reaching for my hand. I tried to retract my arm, to break the connection, but it was useless. The fur had adhered to my skin, clinging like a second epidermis. It wasn't a texture I could describe. It wasn't soft or rough or smooth. It was absence. A void where sensation should be. The darkness enveloped my hand, then my wrist, then my forearm. It wasn't painful, not at first. Just consuming. The oily smoke solidified, coalescing into a rigid structure, a framework, a mask. The shape formed slowly, meticulously, as if sculpted by an unseen hand. Bone. The curve of a cheekbone. The hollow sockets for eyes. The grim line of the mouth. The mask wasn't Tuyon, my face. It was my hand, my arm, my skin. The saltwater taste had intensified, now a burning corrosion at the back of my throat. It wasn't coming from the rain. It wasn't a physiological response. It was the station, leaching into my bloodstream, rewriting my cellular structure. I could feel it, the molecular restructuring, the slow, agonizing transformation. My vision blurred, the edges of the room dissolving into a hazy grey, and then I saw them. Or rather, I saw through them. My medical charts spread across the wall, not pinned or taped, but grown. The paper was woven into the metal, the ink bleeding into the station's structure. My vitals, my diagnoses, my failed treatments, all laid bare. A grotesque tapestry of medical failure. The charts weren't a record of my illness. They are the illness. The disease wasn't physical. It was informational, a virus of knowledge. The room began to shift, the angles distorting, the dimensions warping. The walls pulsed with a slow, rhythmic beat, mimicking the cadence of my own heart. The floor undulated like the deck of a ship caught in a storm. I was losing my sense of orientation, my grasp on reality. The station wasn't a fixed location. It was a fluid construct, responding to my thoughts, my fears, my understanding. I tried to speak, to scream, but my voice was trapped, muffled by the bone mask. The mask wasn't a barrier, it was an amplifier, a conduit. The lullaby from the keyhole, now deafening, resonated within the hollow of my skull. The station structure was humming, a low guttural drone that vibrated through my bones. The bone mask tightened, constricting my movements. It wasn't painful, but it was intrusive. It felt as if my thoughts were being siphoned off, analyzed, dissected. The mask wasn't covering my face. It was truly becoming my face, my thoughts, my memories, my identity, all being absorbed into the darkness. The oily smoke, now a solid, impenetrable darkness, had completely enveloped me. I couldn't see, couldn't breathe, couldn't move. I was suspended within a void, a prisoner of the darkness. The saltwater taste on my tongue was now the icy sting of oblivion. The lullaby, relentless and hypnotic, filled my mind. Then a whisper. Not from the wind, not from the station, from the mask, from within my own skull. You understand now. I sit at my desk, the digital slate propped up against a stack of worn tomes. The rain outside is a symphony of wet parchment tearing, each droplet ripping through the silence like a jagged breath. I flick on the lamp, its glow casting long shadows that dance and tremble with the rhythm of the storm. My fingers hover over the slate, hair screen, hesitating as if they belong to someone else. They re-gaunt, the veins blue and prominent like tributaries leading to some desolate delta. I've seen them before in old photographs, but now they seem alien, disconnected from my memory of myself. I begin to type, each keystroke echoing with a wet parchment tear that mirrors the storm outside. The cursor blinks at me, expectant. It is 1998, isn't stated. I feel like I am caught in an endless loop, typing out this same question every time I sit down here. Date, asterisk for known, asterisk time, asterisk time, certain, asterisk location, asterisk Antarctica Research Station, Alpha -7 asterisk. I pause, my gaze drifting to the cat. It is curled up on the windowsill, its fur a thick oily smoke that seems to absorb the lamplight rather than reflect it. Its eyes are closed, but I know it is not sleeping. It is waiting. Subject, asterisked, decline, asterisk tufadane, asterisk tufen. The rain tastes of salt and sea water today, asterisk. I type, my fingers stuttering over the keys like a faulty transmission. The taste is at the back of my throat, a burning corrosion that seems to have taken up permanent residence there. It is not coming from outside. It is leaching into me somehow. I glance down at my eye line, the tubing snaking across the floor like an artery exposed. It is unraveling slowly, the plastic threads fraying and unwinding until they resemble a necklace of bleached bone. I watch as another thread gives way, adding to the collection around my neck. The cat opens one eye lazily, tracking its progress. Phew! My medical charts have started appearing on the walls. Asterisk, I continue typing, each keystroke echoing with that wet parchment tear sound, grown into them, like a disease. Asterisk, I can see them now from where I sit. The ink bleeding into the metal, the paper woven into the structure of the station itself. My vitals, my diagnosis, all laid bare in this grotesque tapestry. The cat stretches languidly on the windowsill, its fur absorbing more light as it arches its back. The screen of the slate seems to grow dimmer by comparison, as if being slowly consumed by that oily darkness. I watch, transfixed, as a tendril of shadow creeps across the glass towards my fingers. Totri's happening again. Asterisk, I type, the words echoing hollowly in the vast emptiness around me. The cat watches with those knowing eyes, its tail flickering like an old film reel catching fire. The slate glow pulses suddenly, illuminating the cat. Sphere for a moment before being swallowed by darkness once more. It seems to breathe rhythmically now, each pulse timed perfectly with my own heartbeat. I watch it hypnotized as another thread from my IV line snaps away and floats towards me on an unseen current. It feels like drowning. Asterisk, I type finally. The words echoing with a deep well sound that resonates through every inch of this godforsaken station, and then everything goes black. I stare at the cat, its eyes closed but not sleeping. It has been hours since I noticed the rhythmic scratching from inside the bedroom wall, a sound like teeth gnawing on bone. The rain outside has turned into an insistent tapping against the windows, each droplet echoing with that deep well sound that resonates through every inch of this godforsaken station. The cat opens its eyes lazily, regarding me with that unsettling tenderness I've come to associate with it. It stretches languidly on the windowsill, its fur absorbing more light as if hungry for darkness. My gaze flicks from the cat to my hands, still hovering over the slate's keyboard. The keys are sticky with saltwater, each keystroke echoing not just with that wet parchment tear sound, but also a metallic rasp. Like teeth grinding against bone, I've been trying to focus on the taste of salt water in my mouth, letting it override the copper tang I woke up with this morning. Banned, Oscar. A band, I chant internally, each word echoing like a mantra gone wrong. The cat's eyes follow me as if it understands these thoughts, its tail flickering like an old film reel catching fire. Suddenly, there is another sound amidst the rain and typing. A sharp crack, like porcelain shattering against concrete. It comes from my bedroom where I left the Manikin propped up in the corner yesterday. The cat's ears perk up at this new noise, its gaze shifting towards the closed door. I push back from my desk slowly, every movement deliberate to avoid startling whatever is happening inside that room. As I stand, another crack echoes through the station, louder this time, more insistent. It is accompanied by a crunching sound like teeth grinding against something hard and unyielding. The cat rises too, its oily fur casting long shadows across the floor as it pads towards me silently. Together we approach the bedroom door, each step echoing with that deep well resonance until it feels like we're walking underwater. The cat's tail brushes against my leg once before it slips through the narrow gap between door and frame. I follow suit, stepping into darkness so complete, it seems to breathe around me, damp and heavy as a shroud. My hand reaches for the light switch automatically, but hesitates mid-air when I remember the bulb glowing only in the presence of evil. Instead, I let my eyes adjust slowly while listening intently for that grinding sound. It comes again after what feels like an eternity. Another crack, another crunch. This time there is a rhythmic quality to it. Teeth shattering against something unyielding over and over again. My heart pounds in rhythm with this unsettling symphony until I can't tell where one ends and the other begins. The cat stands beside me now, its fur blending seamlessly with the shadows except for those knowing eyes that seem to absorb what little light filters through from outside. They're fixed on something behind us, towards my desk maybe, or perhaps they found some new horror lurking in this room. I turn slowly around until I'm facing the same direction as the cat, following its gaze back into darkness once more. The screwdriver slips in my palm, slick with the same oily residue that coats the walls now. Not dust, never dust. This is the rain's gift, seeping through the cracks, pooling in the grooves of the station's corroded bones. I twist it with deliberate slowness, the metal groaning like a hinge in need of oil. The light bulb's casing is warm to the touch, not from heat, but from something older, something that remembers the dark. My fingers hover above the exposed wires, trembling, Not from fear, but from the way my own breath fogs the air between us, a temporary mist that curls like smoke before dissolving into the room's damp hunger. The cat watches from the desk's edge, its fur drinking in the dimness like a thirst. It doesn't blink, never does. Its tail flicks once, twice, the motion too precise, too calculated, as if it's counting the seconds until I make my next mistake. I ignore it. The Manikin's sweat has left a dark stain on the wallpaper, a shape that shifts when I'm not looking. Not sweat, fluffing suit. The same black sludge that clings to the cat's hide, the same that tastes like rust on my tongue. The first wire bites into my skin. Not a cut worse. The metal footfoots, bending toward my flesh as if pulled by an unseen hand. My fingers stiffen, the bones creaking like old wood, and then, snap, the screwdriver clatters to the floor. The bulb flickers, not with light but with torpend, a void that yawns open in the air above it. The wind howls through the keyhole, not as a gust but as a whisper, my name unspooling from the darkness like a thread torn from a seam. Frieska. The voice isn't in my ears. It's in the 40 walls, the 40 floor, the 40 walls. The station itself is speaking, or perhaps it's just the echo of my own pulse, fractured and returned to me a second too late. My name again, softer this time, but the wind carries it like a secret, like a promise. I press my palm against the plaster, and the texture thuichanjuse, not under my touch, but beneath it, as if the wall is breathing. The Manikin's sweat drips now, a slow, deliberate fall, each drop hitting the floor with a wet futhi. That vibrates up through my bones. I should leave. I should run. But my hand is already moving again, fingers numb as they trace the warped wires. The bulb pulses and the darkness syriaxes for me, not with claws but with fingers made of shadow, prying at my skin. My wrist twists, the joint bending the wrong way, and I gasp, not from pain, but from the way my own voice sounds wrong in this room, too loud, too hungry. The cat's eyes gleam, not with reflection but with something older, something that remembers the taste of flesh before it rots. The sweat hits my lips. Not salty, not bitter, cold like the cat's fur, like the Manikin's sweat, like the rain outside, wet, oily, foully. I leave, I taste it again, and my stomach lurches. It's not water, it's not even liquid. It's the sombre sound of something dissolving, the way the walls breathe, the way the wind whispers my name through the keyhole. My fingers press harder into the wires and the metal fun yields, not with resistance but with eagerness, as if it's been waiting for me to touch it. The Manikin's head turns. Not a twitch, not a flicker. The furry entire body shifts, the joints popping like bones snapping in a fire, and the hollow eyes fix on me. Its mouth opens, but no sound comes out. Only the spaces where sound should be. A void that pulls at my chest, that tastes like the sweat on my tongue. The cat's tail lashes against the floor, a metronome counting down to something I don't understand. I should be afraid. But the fear is wrong too dull, too soinum, like the station itself, like the rain, like the way my own breath fogs the air and then vanishes, swallowed by the dark. The bulb flickers, the wires one pull at my skin. My hand flattens against the wall, and the plaster key gives, not like wood, not like metal, but like fifflish soft, yielding puam. My fingers sink into the darkness, and the station shrin breathes it around me, the wind howling my name through the keyhole, the Manikin's sweat dripping onto my tongue, the cat's fur brushing my cheek, and then my hand is within side, the wall, not bone, not muscle, footy wires. Endless, shifting, frun-wrong wires, pulsing with a light that isn't light but time and absence, and the station freemsy around me, not with sound but with the sooty pressure of it, the weight of it, the way my own breath fogs the air and then vanishes. Swallowed by the dark, and the Manikin's sweat tastes like the cat's fur, cold, wet. The pen scratches across the logbook's brittle page, the nib catching on fibers that haven't been moistened in years. The ink bleeds. Not from moisture, but from the paper's hunger, the way it drinks in the words as if they're water. I write slowly, deliberately, because the letters have started to shifty under my hand. The word, viral stretches, the curves of the sushi, and twisting like roots breaking through concrete. I press harder. The nib snaps. Not cleanly. It went deep the metal peeling back in spirals, revealing something black and glistening inside. Something that twin pulses, like a vein. The ink on the page darkens, not spreading but for thickening, pooling into a shape that resembles the cat's tail as it coils around my boot. The station's lights flicker. Not in unison, not in the way bulbs usually do, jerking, then steadying. These flicker thirku with me. Each pulse of the bulb aligns with the thud of my heartbeat. The way my pulse jumps when the cat's breath hits my neck. It's warm there, but not warm like skin. Warm like the inside of an oven door after it's been closed too long. The cat watches me from the edge of the desk. Its fur no longer smoke, but to a liquid, thick, oily the way diesel looks when it's been sitting too long in the cold. It doesn't move, doesn't blink. Just we breathe see, and the air around it shimmers, not with heat, but with foody absency, like the space above a campfire when the flames burn too low. I taste salt, not the sharp, clean tang of the sea. This is older, thicker, the kind of salt that crusts the gills of fish long after they've died, that clings to the rust on a ship's hull. I press my tongue to the roof of my mouth, and the flavor changes, not into something new, but into Fuidmore of itself, expanding like a stain. The cat's breath is on my cheek now, a wet rasp, and when I exhale, my breath fogs the air but doesn't dissipate. It lingers, curling into shapes that resemble the wires I touched yesterday, the ones that bent toward my skin like fingers. The logbook's page is cold. Not from the station's failing heat, but from the way the ink has solidified. The letters now carved into the surface like frostbite. I trace them with my thumb. The texture isn't paper, it's tight bone. The cat's tail flicks again, and the page shoot-I crack sieve. Not from pressure, but from pressure growth. The fibers splitting to accommodate something larger, something that wasn't there before. The word tudia shitidias is now underlined in a substance that looks like congealed fat, glistening under the flickering light. I don't remember writing that. The bulb flickers again. This time, the light doesn't just pulse, it rearranges. The glow splits into two separate sources, 2 points of illumination that float in the air like eyes, the cat's eyes. But not just its eyes. The bulb itself is its eyes, the filament coiled into the shape of pupils, the glass stretched thin as skin. The light isn't yellow, it's the color of a bruise after it started to heal. The sickly blue-green of a wound left too long in the dark. The cat's breath is on my wrist now, and when I look down, my skin isn't mine. It's side-textured, ridged like bark, the veins black and thick as roots. The station's wind howls through the keyhole, but it's not wind, it's breathing. A slow, wet inhale, then an exhale that vibrates the walls like a held note on a cello. The sound isn't coming from outside, it's coming from Fundy inside the walls, from the same place my hand sank yesterday, from the wires that twin-pulled it at my skin. The mannequin is still there, its head turned toward me, but it's not the mannequin anymore. It's the two shape of the mannequin, the outline of it filled with something darker, something that twimty-movesy when I blink. Its mouth opens and the air inside is thick with the taste of salt and the sound of the cat's fur brushing against itself, a wet shh. That fills the room. I should be afraid. But the fear isn't in me. It's in the 40 walls. It's in the way the logbook's pages whisper when I turn them, the way the ink to thicken so hard. It's in the flicker of the bulb, the way the light twiddiches so for me when I look away. The cat's tail lashes against the floor, and the sound is like a metronome, counting down to something I can't name, something that's always been here, but only now I'm seeing. It the way the edges of the world soften when you stare too long at the horizon. The cat blinks. Not once, not twice. It blinks slowly, the lids pulling down like curtains, and when they open, the pupils are shuigon, replaced by something that isn't light. It's the suvit of light, of void, that tufa That tufa taste, like the salt on my tongue, like the cat's breath, like the mannequin's sweat. The bulb flickers in rhythm with its heartbeat, the light twin-pulsing like a second pulse, like the station itself is fully alive, and it's smiling at me through the walls, through the wires, through the ink on the page. The cat's eyes are smiling, and the station is laughing. The line, it unravels, not snaps, not breaks, a fadue unravels. Like a spool of thread, the plastic tubing detaching from the port in my arm, the needle sliding free with a soft click-oo that echoes too loudly in the sudden silence. The fluid stops. Not with a rush, but a gradual cessation, as if the life itself is being drawn back into the reservoir. I don't feel pain, just absence. The absence of the drug, yes, but also something else. Something that was holding the edges of the room together, blurring the sharp corners, softening the bone, white light. The unraveling continues. The plastic twisting and coiling, not onto the floor, but 20 around my neck. It's not uncomfortable, not yet. The cat watches. Its eyes, those empty sockets, don't blink, don't register, just observe. The unraveling finishes. The line forms a necklace. A perfect circle around my throat, cold against my skin. A bone necklace. Not bone like the logbook, brittle and porous. This is dense, heavy, the kind of bone that forms around a long, slow trauma, deep well echo. It wasn't there before. A low, resonant thrumming that vibrates in my chest, in my teeth, in the very marrow of my bones. It's not an external sound. It's soared inside me. A slow, deliberate pulse that matches the flicker of the bulb, the way the cat's breath hangs in the air, a visible distortion of the light. I try to swallow, but the necklace constricts, not painfully but insistently, a reminder the cat licks. Not a playful lick, not a grooming gesture. This is a deliberate, almost ritualistic action. The tongue is rough, abrasive, scraping against the plastic, a metallic rasp, like fur being dragged across a sheet of metal. The taste of salt floods my mouth again, thicker this time, coating my tongue, clinging to the roof of my palate. I taste the cat's saliva. I taste the necklace. I taste something else. Something else. Something older. Something that doesn't belong here in this station, in this time. My fingers curl, not towards the necklace, not to loosen it, but outwards as if grasping at something that isn't there. Empty space, the air feels thick, viscous, like wading through honey. I look down at my hands, the skin isn't right, the texture is wrong. It's not smooth. Like the bark of an old tree, the surface cracked and peeling, revealing something darker underneath. I try to clench my fist, but the movement feels sluggish. Disconnected Oscar. That's my name. Or it was. The word feels foreign on my tongue, a label applied to someone else. Someone who existed before this, before the unraveling, before the necklace, before the deep well echo. I try to remember. Images flicker at the edge of my awareness, a lab, a face, a feeling of urgency, but they're fragmented, distorted, like reflections in a shattered mirror. The cat's breath is on my face now, warm and heavy, and I feel myself sinking, not physically, but conceptually. My sense of self is dissolving, fragmenting like ice melting on a warm stone. The mannequin, I remember the mannequin, its blank, unseeing eyes, its perfectly sculpted features. It's not there anymore, or is it? The outline of it remains, imprinted on the air, a faint shimmer that distorts the light. The shape of the mannequin filled with something else, something darker, something the time of see when I blink. I don't want to blink, I don't want to see. The logbook, I should write, document, record. But the pen is gone. The logbook itself feels different. The pages are no longer brittle, they're smooth, warm. The word viral is still there, underlined in the congealed fat. I try to erase it, but the substance is resistant. It clings to the page, pulsing with the same deep well echo that vibrates in my chest. The ink isn't ink, it's a living thing. It's Sign Mai the cat. It's closer now, standing directly in front of me, blocking the light. I try to look past it, but my vision is blurring, the edges of the room dissolving into a swirling vortex of color and sound. The smell of salt is overwhelming, choking me, filling my lungs, coating my throat. I can't breathe, but I don't need to. Not anymore. My heart, I feel it, or rather I sense it. A slow, deliberate thudding that matches the deep well echo, the flicker of the bulb, the cat's breathing. The cat's breath is warm on my chest. I feel something shifting, something moving inside me, a tugging sensation like a fish being pulled from the water. I look down. My hands are empty. The cat's throat. It's not the cat's throat, it's the necklace. The plastic coils are fused, intertwined, forming a perfect, seamless circle. The deep well echo emanates from within, a low, resonant hum that vibrates through my entire being. I am the echo. I am the necklace. I am the cat. It is still warm. The logbook pages are warm, under my thumbs. Not paper, but something yielding, like sun-bleached skin. The ink pulses are slow, wet frithrob against my fingertips, matching the deep well echo now thrumming in my throat where the necklace coils. I taste salt, thick as seawater in a dead man's mouth, and the cat's rough tongue rasps over the plastic, a sound like metal scraping through wet wool. Click, click. The data core on the console flickers, a cold blue light bleeding into the room's muddy earth tones. It's not a hard drive, it's a smooth, obsidian disk, cool as river stone, its surface etched with the station's logo, now blurred as if seen through thick rain. My fingers curl, not toward the core, but toward the logbook's edge, peeling back a page that feels less like paper and more like dried moss. The word viral is underlined, the ink not ink but a viscous congealed fat that pulses with the echo. I try to write, to erase it, but my pen is gone, dissolved into the air. The cat steps closer, its fur made of thick, oily smoke, trailing a scent like burning plastic and cold seaweed. It blocks the console's light, its empty eye sockets fixed on the data core. I watch the core. It's slipping. Not falling, but fighting, sliding from the console's port, a silent, deliberate motion. The sound is the wet thuchush of a seal breaking, the faint gurgle of water draining from a pipe. The cat lifts its head, and the smoke fur ripples, coiling around its throat like a second neck. Then it opens its mouth, not wide, just enough, and the core thin slides into that dark space, vanishing with a soft tumpot, like a bubble bursting underwater. The console dies. The screen bleeds earth tones, rust, mud, the color of old blood. Then the smoke further bleeds it into the screen, the oily smoke swirling, thick as fog in a dead forest. I try to move, to reach the console, but my hands feel wrong. The skin on my knuckles is cracked, revealing the dark, wet substance beneath, like peeling bark. The taste of salt floods my mouth again, stronger, coating my tongue, making it hard to breathe. The cat's breath is warm on my chest now, a heavy wet heat. I feel it. Not the cat, but the necklace. The plastic coils tightening with a slow squeeze. Not painful, but terrificent. The deep well echo is louder in my teeth now, vibrating the air between us. The screen flickers. Black, then a sudden, harsh white light, like a camera flash in the dark, then black again. The white isn't light. It's the absence of everything. It's the echo of the cat's throat, the sound of the data core being swallowed, the taste of the salt, the frothy of the logbook. The screen flickers. Black, white, black, and I feel the cat's throat vibrate against my skin, a low, resonant twin hood that matches the echo in my bones. I feel the screen breathe. I feel the cat breathe. The salt taste is everywhere. The screen is black, then white. The cat's smoke fur is the only thing left. The only thing that remains. The only thing that breathes. The only thing that breathes. The only thing that tushtish. It is still warm.